What I thought I would do, okay, we're naming this pilot program, this course that we're putting together called Aspire. And when you think of that word, Andy, and you think about what it is we're going to be doing with people here, what comes to your mind?
Aspiration. What do people want out of their lives? And I don't think we ask ourselves that question very much. We kind of go about our lives on a daily basis and hope I've got to shop and I've got to clean and I've got to go to my job. But truly deep down, what do you want to aspire to do? And it's not necessarily an occupation, but it's what we want to work with is how do we make people understand that an aspiration of being well is probably the primary goal in life. How do you live well? How do you live a full, active, healthy life without continuously being involved in this medical system? So
Yeah.
that's what I see Aspire. And then the other part of that is, the self-empowerment part, right? So not only have we called it Aspire, but we've also empowering wellness. So, I come from a background, as you know, traditional allopathic medicine, trained in an MD school, went on to residency and fellowship, and then practiced for 28 years. And the one thing I recognized over time is we don't empower people to be healthy. We really give people, whether it's direct or subliminal messaging, that the only way to be healthy is you got to go to the doctor every year. And if the doctor prescribes you a pill, you got to take that pill. And we don't give people choices, right?
Yeah.
So, your cholesterol's high. Well, instead of saying, there are options for this, we just say, you need a statin because here it is on the recommendation of the national guidelines that people with X numbers need statins with X risk factors. Well, what are the alternatives? Well, how can you change your lifestyle? Gee, that might be useful. Doesn't come with side effects. Actually, it comes with many benefits. So we look at, from our aspect and the aspirational aspect, how do we help people empower themselves for change that will lead to well-being, a full and long life, just like in the blue zones.
Yeah.
And so we've taken that away from people in our system. And I want to give it back.
Was there anything in your life that you became awake to the pursuit of a lifestyle of health? Because you were deep into the allopathic world of diagnose and prescribe, and you had access to all those tools and medications.
Thanks for the question. And I like to tell this story because it really gives people a perspective on, sort of how we might think. So let's go back in history. 1991, I finished 5 years of radiology training, a year of fellowship. I'm coming out of this giant institution, Henry Ford Hospital, 1,000-bed hospital, and I think I know it all, right?
You're Dr. Andy Nish.
I'm a doctor, and I know everything, and don't question it. And so I get into practice here in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm the first interventional radiologist to practice at the Unity Point system. And, the first year I saw 400 patients, and you have to remember interventional radiology is kind of minimally invasive surgery, and we're basically seeing end-stage everything. End-stage cancer, end-stage vascular disease, end-stage kidney disease, end-stage liver disease. So what I'm doing is we're treating people, maybe giving them a better quality of life, maybe extending their life for a year or two, maybe a little longer. And life goes on, and that's how I'm trained, and that's how I'm thinking. About 2010, maybe 2011, somewhere in there, my wife has a journal, Spirituality and Health. And in that journal is an article about a woman who was talking about wheat and gluten and taking wheat out of her diet and how good she felt. I'm like, really? We're told to eat wheat like it was coming out of the faucet. So I said to my wife, Barb, I said, this is kind of interesting. And it referenced a book by William Davis called Wheat Belly. William Davis, cardiologist over in Milwaukee.
I've read it.
And so I get Wheat Belly, and I said to Barb, I said, Okay, let's take all the wheat and gluten out of the house for a couple weeks and just see if does it make a difference. So we did. And we both felt different, better. My wife especially. And so we adopted that lifestyle. We adopted a lifestyle of really minimal to no wheat. And she particularly has really kind of figured out she's kind of sensitive to gluten.
Right.
And is it truly gluten? Is it the glyphosate in gluten? I don't know. But she had kind of exercise-induced asthma. So we'd be on the bike and she'd have a little inhaler and take that before we rode. A month later, it's gone.
Wow.
Don't need that. Threw the inhaler away.
Wow.
I got rid of sugar and all these bakery goods out of the diet, all of the starchy carbs, the refined carbs, and I immediately lost 12 pounds. Unintentional. I didn't need to lose weight, but since that, my weight's been perfectly stable. I eat anything I want, as long as it's not ultra-processed food.
Right.
And so that really got me thinking. And so a few years later, I'm looking back at my career, and I say, holy mackerel. In 1991, I'm seeing 400 patients. Now in 2016, 2017, we've got over 10,000 visits to our interventional radiology practice. One physician in 91, 4 physicians in 17. One nurse in 91, 13 nurses in 2017, and it goes on. And then I kind of looked at, said, everything we do is on a table. It's got a weight limit. 1991, 350 pounds. 2017, 675 pounds.
Wow.
And we still have people we can't put on the table. And began to really look at, sort of a high-level view of what's going on. And came to the realization, we're not making anybody better. All we're doing is treating the symptoms of a chronically poor state of health. And how did we get to this chronically poor state of health? And I got really interested in nutrition, read books. I got dozens of books on nutrition. Got really kind of interested in evolution and the Paleolithic aspect, lens of nutrition. And decided in 2016 to go to the University of Arizona, do the Andrew Weil Integrative Medicine 2-year fellowship. And about halfway through my fellowship, I really realized that the Western medical model no longer served my interest. And I said to my group, I'm retiring. 1 year, here's my year notice.
You retired right then.
I did. I was about not even halfway through the fellowship and decided I had to get out of this system.
Right.
And so I graduated from the Weil program in August of 2018. I finished my interventional radiology practice 3 months before that in June. And so then what did I do? Well, I've been medical director at Stoddard for, it'll be 9 or 10 years this year. And I had that job. So all of a sudden I'm bridging our traditional system with a more holistic care model. And I'm kind of straddling these two models. And it's hard for me to give up that traditional model. And so I've really had the privilege of having lots of leeway at Stoddard to begin to introduce some of these integrative therapies. So massage therapy and energy therapy and acupuncture and all these different things to help our cancer patients. So I'm continuing to straddle those two worlds. And you and Brian have brought me into this world of, how do we help people? How do we journey with people? How do we give people the tools to be well? Because wellness doesn't come from a box. It doesn't come from a pill bottle. It comes from within.
Yeah.
And so as we develop tools to help people, it's not all about food, right? It's about how we think.
How we feel.
That's where you come from.
Right.
You're the philosopher guy.
Right.
And you and I have talked a lot about this.
Right.
It's how do we sleep?
Yeah.
How do we interact with society? How do we interact with the world?
Yeah.
How do we move? How do we reduce exposures to toxins in our environment? And they're everywhere. Yeah. So this is not just about food, eat this, not that. This is not just about, managing stress, although that's an important part. It's really about managing this world that we interact with every day. And we can't change the world, right? We can't change our partners. We can't change who's around us. We sure can change how we respond to it.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Let me go back in history, because my story, and it intersects with yours at some point. 17 years old, come home from soccer practice. Mom, we have to go to the hospital.
You're 17 now?
I'm 17 back.
Oh, back then. Okay.
I'm 17 back a few years ago.
Got it.
And Mom says, we got to go to the hospital. I think your dad has had a heart attack. Okay, he's 53 years old. I had lived with a guy who would have been diagnosed today as PTSD. That became diabetes because of lifestyle. Ate poorly, ate anything he wanted, even after the diagnosis. Spent a number of times in the emergency room from diabetic comas. Dad was on the brink of death. And then culminating at age 17, my father dies. We go to and I am now terrified, because what about me? And of course, back then, genetic determinism was, I'm screwed. Okay, I was smart enough at 17, almost 18, to know that I'm in big trouble. So I go to the autopsy. My dad's family physician was willing to meet with me in the autopsy, and I asked him, Dr. Castro was his name. I'll never forget him. And Dr. Castro, what do I do? Because I'm scared. Is this going to be my life? Okay. And he looked at me and he said, Tim, he goes, this does not have to be your life. Thank God he didn't put any genetic, yes, son. Well, he just basically said, you're active, you're an athlete, you're fit, and that's what. So what did I do? I stayed with that recipe until about the mid-30s, when that recipe of eat anything you want, calories in, calories out, exercise anything as long as you exercise.
You're a furnace.
I'm a furnace. I'm a machine that burns
calories.
And burns bad calories, whatever I put in. And with that, put on about 40 pounds. And don't know what my metabolic dysfunction, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to have you define metabolic dysfunction. Those are pretty big words for laymen and for everyone to understand that. Didn't go to find out what my metabolic dysfunction was. Pretty sure I had it. Why? Well, because of my experience at the hospital and my experience with chronic disease. I didn't want anything to do with it, terrified of it. I've done everything I can up to that point to keep it from happening. And then I bumped into a guy who was a research scientist. He said, yeah, you've been on that carbo-loading diet, and it's a recipe for your early death. Hello? He had my attention. And so that's how I got involved with Healthy for Life, and went on essential fatty acids, cut out the starch, cut out the processed foods, lost all the weight. And I also had a chronic condition that was part of the symptom of my dysfunction, would have been chronic sinusitis. All went away, kind of like you were getting off of wheat, you felt better. Well, my sinus infections just disappeared within the course of a few months. To that, talk a little bit about This got started with a very interesting, you had done a presentation talking about metabolic dysfunction, and in a minute I'm going to ask you to define that. And you were finished, wonderful presentation as you usually do, and someone in the audience raised their hand and said, well, Dr. Nish, what can we do about metabolic dysfunction? Who would you recommend we go to? Who would you send us to, Dr. Nish? And lo and behold, Dr. Nish was silent. Dr. Nish had no answer for that question, which I thought was a really good question.
Yeah.
And Andy was going to deliver the payload, and there was silence. And then you came back and you said,
I didn't have an answer.
Didn't have an answer.
Because our system is a disease-focused system.
Right.
Not a preventative system. Right. So you can go to traditional allopathic or osteopathic medicine and get your disease treated. You can go to a functional medicine doctor and get your disease treated. But where are you going to go to learn to prevent those diseases? And I didn't have an answer.
Yeah.
And you know what? People have to understand, I don't know everything that's out there in the community.
Yes.
But I personally didn't have an answer.
Yes.
And So Aspire was born, I guess, because we looked at one another and said, well, can we do this? Can we fill a gap that we see as missing in the community? And we said, yeah, we can do this. So that's what was born. And, when I gave that talk, we label, quote, diseases as heart disease and cardiovascular disease and cancer and diabetes and fatty liver disease and Alzheimer's and all the neurodegenerative diseases. But I think that Robert Lustig put it best. Those aren't diseases, those are symptoms of an underlying disease, which is our inability to, or our metabolic dysregulation, meaning we can't metabolize food like we should, and then the underlying inflammatory response that our body has.
Right.
And it's that metabolic dysregulation and that inflammatory response that's creating the heart attacks and the cancers and things like that. So the real disease is lifestyle. The downstream effects are what we treat on a daily basis with surgery and medications and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think we do have to define what is metabolic dysregulation. That's a very long phrase. It means nothing to most people. But it's, so there's an innate ability of our body to take substrate, food, and convert it to energy. And when we do that well, we function well. Well, metabolic dysregulation is our inability to take substrate, i.e. food, and effectively convert that to energy. And so we're really eating lots of calories, but at a cellular level, we're starving because those calories are coming in the form of sugar, processed oils, starchy refined carbohydrates, and all this ultra-processed food. And when we eat that way, we're sending signals to our body to not take that food as calories and use it for energy, but a lot of it's being stored, and a lot of it's causing all this inflammatory havoc that's going on. And so that's what metabolic dysregulation is. It's the inability to effectively use food for cellular energy.
Gotcha.
And that's what we need to function. So what is Alzheimer's disease? What are neurodegenerative disease? Well, they're the inability of the neurons to appropriately partition energy to use so that we can think.
Yes.
It's an energy deprivation.
Andy, this is one. Talk a little bit about, many people believe that the inevitability of their life is disease. They believe that that's where they're headed. I can't tell you how many folks that I work with during the week who have kind of this cascading, well, you know, Tim, I am old. I feel like something at an amusement park, and here we go.
Yeah.
And it's like the inevitability is sickness, so the inevitability is the hospital with the drugs and all that kind of stuff. Talk a little bit about, is that the inevitability of the human?
You know, one of the first things we learned in our integrated medicine course is that the body naturally wants to be well. Yes. Our body's always looking for homeostasis, this balance so that we're well. And so we've perpetuated in our society that the inevitability of life is this downhill course until death. Well, there's, everybody's probably heard of the blue zones. You may not know what it is. It's 5 areas in the world where people live well into their 80s, 90s, and even hundreds.
Right.
And so we've studied what's different about those people than us, besides their skin color or their language. And so sickness is not inevitable. And in fact, we have to change our mindset that we can be well with appropriate inputs to our body almost till the day we die. And yes, we are all going to die, okay? We have this cellular mechanisms called apoptosis. Our cells die over time. And there's a reason for that, which we won't get into, but we are all going to die. Yeah. But we can die well, meaning we just sort of die, or we can die in this very slow, painful downhill course. And so we talk about, are we living longer? Well, the sad answer is no. We're losing life expectancy over the last few years. But even more important for me as a practitioner is, are we living well? So there's health span and there's lifespan. And in this country, most people have declining health span by 60 to 65.
Right.
Meaning that young of age, they're already have chronic diseases, taking multiple pharmaceuticals, and their life is declining. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
I mean, I'm hoping that my wife and I can ride our tandem till we're 90.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that's going to happen, but I can sure envision it.
Yeah.
I want to be able to go climb mountains when I'm 80 or 85. I don't want to have to worry about using a walker or worry about, taking all my medications. And I truly believe I can do that.
Yeah.
And so we have to, first of all, instill that belief into people that the inevitability of life is not to end up cognitively impaired with a walker in a nursing home. That's not normal, okay? That is not, in the world view, in the evolutionary view, that is not normal. I look at life as this is an opportunity, and we've talked about this. I've kind of divided my life, and I know one of the things we want to talk about is, why do I do what I do?
Yes.
I've had a good career. I live very, very comfortably, and I could just walk away from everything and go play. Well, play for me doesn't fulfill sort of that purpose-driven life that we all have. We all have a purpose. And that purpose can be as simple as taking care of the grandchildren or changing the world. Doesn't make any difference.
Yes.
And so, I had my first 30 years was all education, right?
Yeah.
Starting in kindergarten all the way through residency and fellowship. By the time I'm out of that, I'm 32 years old. My next 30 years is working. Probably way too much,
right,
according to my wife and my kids. That's a whole nother story.
Right.
But then this last 30 years or whatever it is,
Yeah.
I get to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And, I still like to work. I still like to be engaged at the hospital because I enjoy my people there, my tribe at the hospital. I've known them for decades, most of them. And so that brings me pleasure and joy. But what also does is this opportunity that we have with Healthy for Life. Because now I get an opportunity to pursue what I'm passionate about. And that's giving people the tools to improve their health and wellness. And so I look at this as you and Brian have given me opportunity to work with you at this company to take it to another level. Mm-hmm. And yes, you've been selling supplements and we've been doing talks and things, but this is different. We're actually going to structure a 6-month program and have structured education, structured conversation, support groups, whatever you want to call them, and really give people the ability to examine their life, become aware of what's going on in their life, because I think most of us aren't aware. You know what? We go sit down, plop down in front of the TV, we grab a Snickers bar and we just sit there and eat. Complete lack of awareness. And so, that's part of this. Let's wake up to what we're doing to ourselves. And when we do wake up, then we can change. And that's what you are so good at, is how do I, as Tim, bring people the tools to use their minds to change their habits. And so we really want people to understand that this is absolutely not your fault. This is not your fault. I had a woman who told me a while ago, and she said she went to her doctor, and the doctor says, well, you just need to push back from the table sooner and go walk.
Right.
That is the most degrading thing ever.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And so we've got to get that whole attitude. This is not anyone's fault. There's no blame here. We have a systematic problem in society that's leading to all this chronic disease. And that systematic problem comes in many, many, many forms. And so that's what we're here to teach people. And we've got to get people out of the mindset, I'm fat. I'm not good enough. I can't. Okay? That's a statement, that's a powerful statement because it ingrains in our brain, I'm not good enough to do this. I can't do this.
I can't succeed at what you guys are talking about doing.
And so, I think that teaching people about what to eat. I think most people inherently know Twinkies are bad and strawberries are good.
Yeah.
Lots of subtleties that we'll talk about.
Yep.
But I think the biggest barrier is right here.
Yes.
And I think that's where, your coaching is going to be so important, because we have to help people view themselves differently in this world.
Yes.
Social media, I hate social media because we're always comparative, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not as good as them. I'm not as smart as them.
Yep.
And it just is, it's a rabbit hole that people go down, and then all of a sudden they're anxious and they're depressed, and they're looking for a pill to change that. And we want to look at it as, this is a wonderful, beautiful world.
Yeah.
There are many choices to be had, and hopefully we can help those people become aware of what they're doing.
Yep.
Because I think we're not aware, right? We've talked about awareness so much.
Yeah.
If you're not aware that you just sat down and ate a bowl of Skittles in front of the TV, then how do you change that behavior?
Yeah.
So we want to be aware of what we're putting in our mouth,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
simple ways to do it. Look at whatever you're eating. Is this good for me? Is this feeding my cells and feeding, more importantly, the gut cells, the bacteria? Or is this poisoning my cells?
Yeah.
And so we want to get people to think about what they're doing, think about what they're eating, think about that relationship that they're having, think about sleep, all these different things.
Yeah. Because we have lots of things in our society that's a painkiller, including food is one of our major drugs that we do, because you can tell the physiology of what happened when I go to that big thing of dark chocolate that's filled, Andy, with polyphenols, right? It's
chocolate's good.
and it's 85%.
Yeah, there you go.
It does have a lot. So when I put the first handful in, and I noticed 2 hours later I put the second handful in, and lo and behold, when I finally go, wait a minute, what am I doing here? What is this killing? What is this numbing? Right? It's doing something. It's taking care of something. And so that's going to be a lot of the conversations. We'll have that in our class. We'll have that with one-on-one with me. Yeah. What could we have done? What choices could we have made? I've said to folks with diabetes class we had right before COVID, this is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Nobody's coming to help you, and you have the power to do this. Yeah. I had 3 ladies start to cry because they had been told most of their life, you just have to push away from the table. You're lazy.
Well, if you get a diagnosis of diabetes by the doctor, they'll say, well, it's not curable, but it's treatable.
Yes.
And my answer to that is, it's completely reversible.
Yes.
And then you don't have to have any treatment.
Yes.
And
yes.
We send the wrong signal.
Yes.
We send the wrong message.
Yep.
And when we say that it's not curable, but it's treatable, we've then disempowered that person to really do anything.
Yes.
Well, I got to have pills.
Yes.
That's my life.
Yes.
I'm here to tell you that's not your life.
Yes.
But I think that, Tim, why shouldn't I just do this myself?
Yeah.
You tell me I have cultural authority.
You do.
Yeah, I have cultural
you
authority.
You do. You're
right?
a doctor.
Because
You're a doctor.
I got 2 letters behind my name.
You do.
And you want to think of the fallacy of that? We've given way too much power to 2 letters.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with degrees. Oh, you're an MD.
Yeah.
You know everything.
Yes.
Well, that's absurd.
Yes.
And so we got to get rid of that. I'm just a dude on a journey, and I'm here to share my knowledge and experiences.
Yes.
I'm no better or worse than anybody else. I'm on the same journey.
Yes.
Yes. Am I perfect? Oh, God, no.
Yes.
I go through this every day.
Yeah, he's not perfect.
No.
I've gotten to know Andy. He's not perfect.
None of us are perfect.
Yes.
And if we are trying to achieve perfection,
yes,
that's a goal, an unobtainable goal.
Yes.
And so we got to get away from this perfection model, because what does it lead to? Obsession, anxiety, and eventually depression, because it's a goal you can't achieve. So when we talk about things to do, nobody's perfect, okay? Yeah. Everybody is going to do the best they can with the tools they have.
Yes.
And so that's why this is, we're not going to talk about weight. We're not going to talk about appearance.
Right.
We're going to talk about inside. Are you well?
Yes.
Here and here.
Yes.
And whatever you do here affects here. And whatever you do here affects there.
Absolutely.
This is a two-way street.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of what we're trying to accomplish. And are we going to measure, 8,000 lab tests and tell you your vitamin C level and your B12 level? Nope, not going to happen.
Right.
Because then we get obsessed with numbers.
Yes.
And we will want to, look at some numbers. I think that's important to define. Are you metabolically well? Just because you're thin doesn't mean you're metabolically well.
Yeah.
4 in 10 people who are thin are not metabolically well.
Talk a little bit about the role that you see you're playing with these folks, because it's not going to be the bastion.
It's not a
of-
hierarchical role.
Not a hierarchical
No.
role. Love that
I
word.
am here to tell you what to do, and
Yep.
don't question that authority.
He's Dr. Nish.
Yeah, and that's the attitude we have.
Yes.
Because I've heard it from patients. Well, I asked my doctor about this, and they shut me down. They're not even willing to talk about it.
Yes.
And so anything I do
Yes.
here is an open conversation.
Yes.
I'm here to learn too. I'm going to learn things from people who join this program.
Yes.
And so that learning stimulates me to learn more.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm going to look at that and see what there is behind that.
Yes.
And I only want people who come here to believe that they can empower themselves
Yes.
to change their habits. This is not a diet intervention. This is not a weight loss intervention. This is a lifelong change intervention.
Yes.
So this isn't a 6-week, do this for 6 weeks and all will be well.
Yes.
Nope. This is for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yes.
And yes, we're going to fall down and we're going to have times when things aren't so well. But if you can be aware of that and remember the tools, you'll get back on track in no time.
Yeah.
And if you can remember, don't label yourself. I'm a bad person because I ate a Twinkie.
Yes.
Nope, you're Jim who just happened to eat a Twinkie and you recognize that probably wasn't my best choice.
Yeah.
And the other thing about awareness is when you put food in your body, when you have a social interaction, when you sleep, become aware of
Yeah.
what that feels like. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I ate this really great, vegetarian stew. I felt tremendous. But the next time you have a donut, become aware of, ooh, that wasn't so good.
Speak a little bit, and we're probably coming to the end of our talk, but speak a little bit to the power of community that you see. You've used the term community
Yeah.
over against the rugged individualists of our society.
Yeah.
How does community, because we're going to have a community, we're going to have a group of people here, we're going to put them together, they're going to interact. We're going to interact with them. It's not monologue, it certainly isn't hierarchy.
No.
What is the power of community in your experience, in your understanding, knowledge, reading, study?
First, we have to go back and understand that we as human are tribal people.
Yes.
Okay? We were never designed to live alone.
Yes.
We're tribes. And so your tribe can be your family, your tribe can be your church, your tribe can be Healthy for Life.
Yes.
We're a community, a tribal community. And so Stephen Cole, he's a psychologist out at UCLA, and he's written a lot about community and socialization. And
Yep.
he would say that the most powerful influencer in health is social connection.
Yes.
If you don't have that, you can chop 9 to 15 years off your life.
Yes.
It's astounding. It's just like smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Yes.
And I think we've recognized this more with COVID. We locked down, right? And so now we have all these particularly elderly people who are not mobile. They're stuck in their houses or their apartments, and they did horrible
Right.
because they lost connection with other human beings.
Yeah.
And there is no substitute.
No,
This thing is not a substitute for human connection, okay?
it's not.
Human connection is in the flesh talking
Yes.
to others.
Yes.
And so that's part of this community. Who knows? Maybe you'll get a friend out of this.
Yes.
A true lifelong friend. Harvard study of adult development started in, I believe, 1938. It's still running. The one question they wanted to answer was, what in a person's life predicts longevity?
Yeah.
So they started out with 700 and some men. They followed them generationally, still going on. They followed lab tests, life, everything. And what they determined was the best predictor of longevity is community and socialization.
Right.
And so what does that mean? Do I have to have 100 friends? Do I have to have 2 friends? Nope. What it means is you have someone in your life,
Yep.
husband, wife, church member, brother, sister, whatever it is. No matter what the circumstance, you can call them 24/7, 365, and they will be there for you.
Yes.
And believe it or not, there's lots of people without that in their life.
Yes.
And they're on an island. And so the objective sense of community, meaning I'm here in a group or I'm sitting on a mountain alone,
Yes.
here's the thing that was really surprising. The subjective feeling of loneliness. I could be sitting in this room, and if I feel excluded from the tribe,
Yep.
that is physiologically just as powerful
Yes.
as if you're a million miles away.
Yes.
And so this is an inclusive community. Nobody should ever feel left out.
Yeah.
Nobody should ever feel judged. Nobody should ever feel not belonging.
Yes. That's one of the things I see my role is encouraging people they can do this work. They are, the other part of that is it's kind of like people are already whole. The journey is getting back to the reality that already is wholeness.
Yep.
Default. What's our default? Health.
Wellness.
The word whole. Yes. And holiness. And I don't know what we'll get in. We've talked about the theological implications of all that. I have no idea how much where that'll go. But the whole idea, we were created whole. That's who we are. And the journey of life is the return to that reality so that we can live out what does a whole person look like. And of course, it looks like wellness. It looks like well-being, vitality. It looks like grandkids. It looks like I can almost catch my 9-year-olds.
Yeah.
Right? That type of
And that's what's
life.
exciting for me.
Yeah.
You know what? I get to partner with you and Brian. You've given me leeway to do things that I think we should do. And I just want to emphasize to anybody who's listening, watching, that this is not only your journey, it's my journey,
Yes.
it's your journey, and in no way are we the experts here,
Yeah.
but we can sure share our experiences, we can sure journey with these people and help them understand what's worked for us, may or may not work, and you know what? That's why we give so many different tools.
Yes.
Because what works for me may not work for you, but here's another tool
Yes.
that may work perfectly well for you.
Yeah, one
So-
size definitely does not fit all.
No, and I invite anybody
Yeah.
to join this journey. It's going to be empowering. It's going to be fun. We're going to create a community. It's going to be supportive. It's never going to be judgmental.
Yep. It's going to be safe.
And it's safe. Yeah.
Yeah.